Okay, welcome to the week 2 go-to session. So this is session number 2 of 4 that we're going to hold this month every Tuesday at 7 p.m. First of all, I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I was out of town. I'm here in Orlando, but I went to Missouri for 6 days. Left last Wednesday, came back this morning, so I'm still catching up on things. Speaking of catching up on things, I hope people saw my announcement. I did change the due date for this guy here, assignment number 1. This was the worksheet that you had to complete, so it's due tonight at midnight. Originally, it was due at Monday at midnight, and the due date change was for a couple of reasons. First of all, I was out of town, got very little work done for those 6 days I was with family. Second of all, there was a little snafu. I wrote about this in an announcement where I guess the original video, people had trouble seeing it or hearing it or something like that. Then I fixed that Saturday night, but it turns out I actually posted the wrong video. So I got that fixed Monday morning. So anyway, I extended this to Tuesday so people would still have time to watch the lecture, which was pretty important. I'm speaking about last week's lecture, so they could fill out the worksheet correctly. Right, where you had to choose an ad from the approved list, which is listed underneath the assignment description here. That's the ad you're going to be working on all month, and then you had a worksheet to fill out. I'm going to be spending today through Thursday grading those worksheets. We instructors aim for a 72-hour turnaround time, so that would be Thursday by midnight. And as I'll discuss in today's lecture, the main activity for this week is an outline. Like the worksheet, it's not a terribly difficult assignment, but it does take, I think, it takes some attention to detail. But still, people who feel pretty comfortable with what they've handed in can probably start working on the outline right away. But even if you get my feedback Thursday, that still leaves Friday, Saturday, Sunday to work on the outline. And again, it's not a full essay. It's a bit more detailed what we're asking from students than a typical shorthand outline. But still, it's not like a super dedicated piece of writing. So hopefully everybody will have time to watch this lecture, to read my feedback on the worksheets, and produce a decent outline by Sunday. So let's start talking about the outline, okay? Because this is probably a good chunk of this week's lecture. So let's get into it. This week we're going to talk about research organization and the outline. So I think we're going to begin mostly with the outline stuff, but a quick refresher over some stuff that we covered last week. Remember last week we talked about the writing process, this icon here, okay? And this class is specifically designed so that we're taking you through each of these stages, mostly week to week. Okay, so last week you were brainstorming, that was the worksheet, and selection of the ad. By the way, just so people, in case you're curious, can people go ahead and type in the chat which ad you've chosen to write about? Maybe it'll be cool to see what each other is doing. This week, we're kind of here, these two bars here. We're going to talk a little bit about research. And the outline helps you organize your material. And of course, next week, you're going to write the essay, and then you're going to get a feedback and revise in week 4. Okay, Carlos is writing about McDonald's. Sequana, I hope I'm saying that right, is also doing McDonald's. Grace is writing about Allstate, so is Linda. Okay, so some Allstate people, some McDonald's people. Both those commercials have a lot going on. Because remember in week 1 we used 2 print ads as examples, a Jeep ad and an MG ad, right, from like 1972. And we talked about all the things that are going on in those print ads. Okay, so you're going to be looking for similar things that work in your chosen ads. Hopefully you're already seeing lots of things going on in both the Allstate and the McDonald's ad. There's actually a lot going on. The major activity for this week is the outline. Most of you probably have heard of that term. Probably a lot of you have created an outline. Maybe it was a long time ago. Maybe it was in high school English class. But we all kind of know what outlines typically look like, right? They're Roman numerals. They're ordered in terms of importance. So a Roman numeral is typically what the topic of a specific paragraph is going to be. Your main points within that paragraph usually receive a capital letter from the alphabet, indented. And then if you have specific points you want to make about that main point, a sub point within that main point, then you indent again and use a lowercase Roman numeral. And if you need to go beyond that, you can also use a lowercase letter of the alphabet. Probably most of you won't go beyond just the Roman numeral and maybe one level below that. Okay, but why are we outlining? Basically, this is a way for you to organize your material, but it also allows me to see how you're thinking. You're going to get some feedback from me on your worksheet, of course. Hopefully, I'll be able to pinpoint which ideas seem rich enough to explore in your essay. But then you're going to have to organize your material. So think of the outline as like a blueprint for your essay, right? It's a plan of your essay. It's not the full essay itself, so the outline doesn't require you to write long paragraphs, okay? Just a single sentence. But yeah, it acts as a plan. It helps you because then you can just take your outline and then turn it into essay form. But it also helps me because if I see any potential pitfalls, maybe something sounds off topic. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes, there might be a handful of students who maybe they wander away from the ad. They hand in an outline where they're talking about McDonald's, the corporation, or they're talking about fast food culture, right? And they kind of they forget that it's not that they need to do ad analysis, right? Explaining what the ad is doing and how it's doing it. And if I don't catch that before the essay comes in, that could lead to problems. So yeah, the worksheet, the outline, allows me to see that everything's heading in the right direction. And yeah, here's just a quick list of why we outline. As I said, it forms a plan for your essay. It helps you organize your ideas because literally you're going to take what you have in outline form and you're just going to fill in those points with more detail, right? So if you have a Roman numeral 1 that's going to discuss this main point you want to make about your commercial, for example, maybe your chosen ad is doing something interesting with the use of color. Okay, that could be the topic of one of your body paragraphs. When you see it in outline form, you just know, okay, this paragraph has to be about color. And if you've listed some subpoints that you plan to address in that paragraph, you just have to further develop those. And yeah, it just makes it easier to write the essay. And as I noted, of course, it allows me to sort of check things before you move on to the next stage of the process, which is writing the draft of your essay, which will be at the end of week 3. Okay, so yeah, what we're talking about is a working outline, which is what I just described. An outline that you can literally take and then transfer it, take those ideas and turn them into your actual essay. The working outline that you'll submit for this assignment is it's more or less the standard outline that you may have produced in high school or maybe another college level English class. Is there anyone here who has never created an outline? Curious to see if there is anybody who hasn't. For instance, often with outlines that you do kind of on your own, you might write in shorthand or fragments. Okay, but we're going to ask you to write in full sentences. Grammar and mechanics are important for all activities in this class. Okay, every piece of work you should submit should aim for the highest level of professionalism, which means paying attention to grammar and mechanics. So yeah, we're going to ask that your outline is written in full sentences, but again, you're going to write maybe a sentence or two for each part of the outline. And Raj says he's never made an outline. That's fine. We have some examples or parts of examples. Okay. Remember, there's research. I don't know if anybody's taken a sneak peek at the essay assignment itself, but you'll have to have 3 sources for your essay. One of the sources has been provided for you if you wish to use it. It's that video on pathos, ethos, and logos, which was part of the week 1 material. I believe it's listed right before that list of 7 or 8 ads that you have to choose from. Okay, so you can pull something from that video if it's useful. But you'll need to find 2 other sources to help you support what you're saying. You're going to include your thesis statement in the outline. That's something that typically you may not include in an informal outline, one that you're just doing for yourself. Okay, but we're going to ask you to include your thesis statement. And you're going to put the building blocks of your introduction paragraph on the page as well. So yeah, there's a little bit more depth in this. You're going to have to write full sentences. We're going to ask you to at least start your research this week, because I'm going to show the template that you'll have to fill out in just a moment. But there is a space for you to put research. Samantha's asking if anybody chose the Hennessy ad. That's the one with Naz, right? Yeah, and you'll have to list your thesis and start working the introduction paragraph. Okay, so here's kind of like the template of what an outline looks like. Now, obviously, this is filled with just generic information right now, written in fragments. This is not what your outline is going to look like. You're not just going to write major idea number one, supporting sentence. No, you're going to fill this in, right? You're going to put your major idea here, written in a complete sentence. Whatever you think one of your key points will be in that paragraph, you'll list that here in a complete sentence. And if you have some sub-points to make about that, you'll list them as well. But here you can see the hierarchical construction, right? Which basically means ordering information from most important to least important. So yeah, the topic of an actual paragraph gets that Roman numeral. And then a supporting point within that paragraph gets a capital letter A. The sub-point beneath that gets a number. And again, we could continue. Then it goes to a lower case letter, I think, and then a lowercase Roman numeral. But most of you probably won't go beyond these 3 levels here. Okay. The reason why we have 3 listed here is because you're going to have your introduction paragraph, at least the building blocks of it, above here, and the conclusion is going to go here. So yeah, this is the body of your paper, okay? Because again, figure you're going to need an introduction paragraph, a conclusion, and in between at least 3 body paragraphs. Some people have more. Some people decide, wow, I have 4 interesting elements that I want to explore in this essay. So you'll need 4 paragraphs. Jacob says, can we incorporate other outlining techniques into our outline? Jacob, it depends. I mean, I'd mostly like you to stick to this. I'm not sure what you're thinking of. But yeah, it shouldn't wander too far away from this. Because if I mean, sometimes, and I'm not saying you're going to do this, Jacob, but sometimes students will just like list bullet points. But a whole list of bullet points doesn't show me like the order of information. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, within reason perhaps, but this is pretty standard outlining technique here. Okay, so to begin your outline, you're going to need instructor feedback in the worksheet. Like I said, it probably will take me till Thursday at midnight to get those turned around. But that will be useful. And plus, by the way, let's say you start working your outline and something in my feedback needs to be changed. Well, the great thing about the outline is we're talking about the fixing of a sentence or 2 here and there. Okay, so it's not like a huge dedicated piece of writing that's going to take a long time to repair. Yeah, you might highlight or underline important ideas, okay, that you've already noticed in your ad or in your worksheet. Some of you maybe already know the 2 or 3 or 4 key elements that you already see at work in your ad that you're going to write about that will form your body paragraphs. Okay. Same thing with specific details. The worksheet really, I think, helped with that. As a matter of fact, the worksheet almost solely focused on you just, listing details, pointing out what you noticed, what you thought was interesting. And hopefully, most students' worksheets have a wealth of information there. Like, there's a lot of good stuff. Sometimes students even list things that they don't think is important, or they even say, I'm not sure if this is important. But remember, any detail that appears in the ad, it's not there by accident. So a couple people mentioned the McDonald's commercial. I forget who, Saquon and Carlos. The 2 of you might have noticed that in the McDonald's commercial, the main character, or the main person, whose name is Andy, he's at his first day at work, and early in the commercial, he notices a young woman who is also clearly on her first day at work, right? And then they return to that image at the end. Like, that's not an accident. And in the week 1 lecture, I talked about how it's important to ask the question why all the time. Why include that? Okay. Advertising agencies are paid a lot of money to come up with these ads. So no details accidental. So yeah, why throw that in there? Or if you think you notice something interesting about color, ask yourself the question, why? Why is there a change in color? Or why these colors? Or something structural or something thematic. Okay? And you may not come up with answers to all your why questions, but you only need to find those 2 or 3 or 4 that you do feel confident in discussing and answering that question, why was this included? Again, because we're trying to get underneath the hood of the ad, explaining what it does and how it does it. Okay, and finally, there's one thing here. Formulating full sentences using these ideas, details, okay? So basically transferring the work from your worksheet, turning it into an outline. It's going to use full sentences, and of course, these are going to be transformed into your actual essay material. Oh, there's one more. Okay, put the sentences in the outline worksheet. Let me show the activity itself. Okay, so it's this guy here, the outline, due December 4th. Is that Sunday, by the way? Anybody know the date off the top of their hands? Okay, yes, it is Sunday. Thank you, Grace. Okay, so it's due Sunday. And if we go into the activity itself, you have a grading rubric, which is always useful to look at. So you can see the grade breakdown and see how the assignment is being graded and what you have to do. Turn an A, a B, a C, or lower. But you also have this guy here, okay, the actual outline template. And this is what you're going to be filling out. Okay, so you get some basic instructions here. A reminder to proofread your work, and this is going to be submitted to turn it in. Basically, all your writing activities are going to be handed in, submitted to turn it in. Okay. And yeah, you have some things to fill out here in terms of the introduction. Introductions typically begin with a hook, which can be an interesting fact or an idea to kind of entice the reader. You probably learned lots of tricks, maybe in a previous English class, beginning with a powerful quotation, beginning with a personal anecdote or a personal story, using an interesting example, asking a thoughtful question. These are all terrific techniques, by the way, but they become lousy techniques if they're just used generically. In other words, if you're asking a question that nobody's interested in answering, that's probably not a great way to hook the reader. Or beginning with a dropped-in quotation that doesn't really transition naturally into the sentences that follow. That's not really a hook. That's just a technique that's being used, yeah, again, kind of mechanically. And I showed this briefly last week, but I said that I'm working on this assignment you guys are working on as well. I chose a Jeep ad. We looked at it last week in week 1. I'm not going to read my full introduction out loud, but I guess the technique I'm using here as a hook is basically riffing on the idea of Jeep and its image, right? We talked about this last week, remember? That just the word Jeep conjures up a specific image. And I kind of riff on that for, I don't know, look, 7 or 8 lines before I get to my thesis, right? Which defines the terms of my paper through the use of simple color, playful imagery, and a double meaning tagline. The ad, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so already I know what I'm going to discuss. Color, the imagery in the ad itself, and its tagline. I'm not just going to literally just point out what anybody could see, like the color in the ad is blank. The images are blank. The tagline is, okay? No, I'm going to explore these areas and show how they're doing much more. For example, we talked about this in week 1, but the color isn't accidental, okay? It's actually doing a lot of work. Same thing with the imagery and that tagline. But it also sets up the terms of my paper. And if you need to refresh any of this, we talked about this in week 1. We talked about what a thesis statement is, and we gave 2 examples for those 2 automobile ads, the Jeep ad and the MG ad. Okay, so keep that in mind, that the thesis is a sentence. Sometimes, too, that's basically defining the terms of your paper. setting up the rest of the essay. Samantha says, when will we be receiving feedback from you? If you mean the worksheet, like I said, because I extended the deadline to tonight, we instructors aim for a 72-hour turnaround time. So, and it's probably going to take me that much time because I have 3 classes of students to get through. So yeah, Thursday at midnight. But like I said, even though that leaves you, okay, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's 3 full days. And even if that does feel a bit short, again, it's an outline. Okay. So that shouldn't be put you behind the 8 ball too much. Jesse says, when do I do the practice questions in the LSA? Okay, let me get back to the Learn Smart Chief stuff a little bit later, okay? Toward the end of the session, baby. Because I do want to make some comments about that. Okay. And as you can see, by the way, the order in which you present things in your thesis is the order in which you should discuss in your essay. So I say color, imagery, and the tagline in the print ad. If I start talking about the tagline first, the reader will follow along. They'll catch on. But our brains are entirely logical, so we expect to see these things discussed in the order in which they appear. So color is the thing I discuss in the first body paragraph. Okay? And if they're out of order, you can either just rearrange your body paragraphs or rearrange the order of the details in your thesis, okay? But if we go back to the template here, okay, so an introduction, okay, 1 sentence that you think could act as your hook. You'll develop it later for your actual essay, okay? So let's go back. Where was my Jeep essay again? Okay, Jeep, actually that's a sentence all by itself. The well-known brand practically markets itself with its images of ruggedness, independence, and adventure. Okay, so that's basically my hook. I riff on that hook for several more lines, but okay, there's my 1 sentence hook. You'll have to, I always recommend that people just sort of sit back, clear their mind, and what you're trying to do is find a way into the essay, okay? And there are literally dozens of ways to do it. Again, the most common ones are, again, beginning with a quotation, beginning with an example, beginning with an interesting fact, using an example from history, if appropriate, using an example from the news headlines, asking a thoughtful question, using a hypothetical scenario. That basically means a sort of imagine this, picture this. I kind of do that here. I ask people to imagine, okay, the Jeep and what its image brings to mind. And then I can say, there you go now, downshifting around a snaky mountain bend, kicking up dust through the sun-baked Australian outback, zooming past zebras grazing the Serengeti. Okay, I'm asking my readers to sort of imagine something. Okay, that's a hook. Basic information about your ad. So again, 2 to 3 sentences. Your reader is not me. It's not your classmates, although we will read your essay. Remember, there's peer review in week 4. But your reader is actually an intelligent, well-informed, general reader. Okay? So that means we put in basic information. We don't start out, for example, let me see if I can just create a new paragraph here. Let me get to the second page. Okay. Sometimes I see papers that begin like this. This ad was really interesting. The ad creates mystery and drama. Okay. But if you're a general reader, where are you thinking? What ad? Okay. Right? You feel kind of lost because it's assuming that the reader already knows that you're talking about an ad. Yes, I know you're talking about an ad. Your classmates do too, but the general reader wouldn't. So it's what we're trying to do here with a brief 2 to 3 sentences of a description is just to get some of those basics down. Okay, so if you're writing about the McDonald's ad, it would be something like the McDonald's ad first day features, an office worker named Andy who is feeling overwhelmed is okay. Like this, you could grab a person off the street and they would follow this. The McDonald's ad first day features an office worker named Andy who is feeling overwhelmed on his initial day on the job. Now, maybe I would go back and improve some of the wording there, but like this makes sense to the general reader. So keep that in mind too, okay? Who your audience is. And then, yeah, your thesis statement. Do I have last week's slides at the quick? If I can't find it quickly, I'll just skip it. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so remember last week we talked about thesis statements? It's your overall topic, which is your ad, plus significance. And we said a good way to do this is name the ad. So like McDonald's first day, targets, put the ad's audience, using blank, blank, and blank in order to, and there's a lot of blanks there and it might seem confusing, but that's why we looked at examples using those 2 car ads. Okay, so there were 2 examples of thesis. So if you need to go back and review some of the information from week 1, the recording is there. But there are 2 examples of thesis statements. Okay, and then the rest of the outline is basically what we saw on the slide there. Okay, the body itself. What will your first main point be? What do you think are going to be your sort of main, I guess you could call it, yeah, the main points you're going to make under that paragraph? So if you're talking about color, maybe you have 2 or 3 things you specifically want to say about the use of color. There's space for a supporting quote, a citation, and a reference. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, but I won't go through this whole thing. Basically, you need to fill out this outline template. Does that make sense? You even have a prompt here for your conclusion, where you'll basically restate your thesis. I should kind of reword that. Maybe say, echo your thesis. You should find a new way to say it, not literally repeat the exact wording. And then add a few sentences to give your readers a final satisfying closing note. Okay? Okay, back to our presentation. Anyway, that's the main task for this week, okay? Yeah, and there's what we just looked at, okay? Thesis statements. So, for example, here's the thesis statement from a Diet Coke commercial. The Diet Coke Tall, Dark, and Handsome ad targets women, okay, so that's the audience it seems like it's trying to reach, through romantic music, slow camera movement, and sexually charged language in order to make an emotional appeal, right? So we got everything we need here. That's our thesis. We know there's going to be a paragraph about music, about camera movement, and about sexual language, right? Those are going to be the 3 body paragraphs. So see if you can do something similar for your chosen ad, whether it's Allstate or McDonald's, etc. Okay, and there's just an example of that. And this isn't a full outline, but here's an example of how, for example, you might handle Roman numeral number 1. Okay, full sentence. The ad uses romantic music as part of its emotional appeal, and 2 of the main points that would be made in that paragraph. Okay, so that's basically what you're going to have to do. Does this make sense, everyone? Is there anybody who's confused and wants to ask a specific question so far about the outline? Michael says it makes sense. Okay, good. Yeah, like I said, it does take some work, but I think it's similar to the worksheet. It takes work, but it's not. Yeah, we're not yet in full writing mode yet. Okay, this is just a reminder that when it comes time, and this will become important when it's time to write your essay, but it's important in the outline too, to try to use as specific language as possible. For example, just saying that the Diet Coke ad uses sound. That's kind of generic and very, very broad, right? So if we can define things as specifically as possible, for example, romantic music, that's more powerful, okay? And here's another example. Okay. And by the way, this is kind of fine when we're just starting out, but when it comes time to proofread or to go over your essay and try to improve things a bit, see if you can be as specific as possible. For example, there's a difference between a plain support. This is an example of a supporting detail, by the way, something you would put in your body paragraph. Right, the Diet Coke ad shows a glass filled with ice. Okay, but here's much more specific. The Diet Coke ad opens with a close-up shot of an empty glass filled with ice to set up audience expectation. Right, the reader gets a lot more out of this. They can see it, and they specifically know how it's being used. Okay, so plain versus detail. I already mentioned this earlier. You're going to have to use research. Okay, you're going to need 3 sources. I'm going to go to the Full Sail Connect. Does everybody know how to get to Full Sail Connect? Do I have to show that step? Because I already have it open. Actually, you know what? I am going to go through the steps because maybe people aren't sure how to find the library databases. Okay, so here's Full Sail Connect. I'm already logged in. You might have to log in. You can search for the library under organizations, but it's probably quickest just to grab it from the menu on the left, library. And once you're in, you scroll down to research databases. You have a whole bunch of databases. EBSCOhost is probably the best one to start with. Another popular one you've probably heard of is Lexisnexis. Okay, that's down here. Lexisnexis tends to search newspapers primarily, whereas EBSCOhost, it includes some newspaper sources, but it includes many more magazine, journal results as well. EBSCOhost is a pretty good one to start with. And you can even have, by the way, a lot of different databases fall under the giant umbrella of EBSCOhost, and I just find it quickest to select all. I mean, you're probably not going to need something from the audiobooks collection, but just to make it simple, okay? And this is where you start searching for supporting, because here's what we're aiming for here, okay? Because some people might think, well, what do I need research for? I feel comfortable with this ad. I know what to say. But it's always good to be able to back up what you're saying with some sort of support. It strengthens your arguments. Also, it's just a standard protocol in the field. I mean, even with kind of silly things that you might read online sometimes, whether it's TMZ or People Magazine, you'd be surprised how many times an article, even if it's just a short gossipy type thing, will have things like, according to so-and-so's hot article from last week, and then they might quote from it or at least refer to it. Obviously, in the age of the internet, sometimes it's just a hyperlink that you can click on, but it's very, very common that you refer to other people's ideas, what other people have said about something. Here, obviously, we're not going to be using those types of sources. You need at least 3 sources. One has been provided for you, okay? And it's under assignment number 1. And it was this video here, Pathos, Logos, and Ethos in Advertising. You don't have to use this, but if there's something interesting in here that you can quote from, feel free to use it because you've already got one of your 3 sources out of the way. One must come from the library database, which is why I'm showing how to use it now. The other can come from just general searches online, but be careful, okay? We don't want to see like wikis, personal blogs, about.com. Sometimes I see students literally just define the word pathos, put it in quotation marks, and count that as research. People know what pathos means. B, if they didn't, you could explain pathos in your own words. Pathos is the appeal to emotion, right? There's really no reason to have to quote it and cite it. And Jacob, yes, Wikipedia is out. Okay, so we're looking for quality sources. The problem with Wikipedia is, of course, we don't know specifically who's writing it. And I'm sure you've all had the experience of some Wikipedia entries look great. like if you're an expert in a certain area, you just can kind of tell that it's been written with care, probably by people who are specialists in that field. And other times it's just atrocious. It's terrible. So yeah, we're looking for information that we can trust. Plus, Wikipedia is literally an encyclopedia. And encyclopedia entries, that sort of general summary type information is not what we're looking for. So what are we looking for? In general, we're looking for things that can support your specific points you're going to make in the body of your paper. So if for the Jeep ad, I'm going to focus on color, imagery, and what was the third thing? Well, probably I won't find too much information about their very, very specific tagline, but I could probably find something on color and imagery, which for that ad is animal imagery. So yeah, if you're going to discuss color, why not look into color in advertising? If you're going to talk about camera moves, maybe you specifically do a search for camera angles or camera angles in advertising. For the most part, it's probably not a good idea to research the company or the brand itself, though there are some exceptions. And I'm going to show an example here. For example, because my introduction riffed on the idea of Jeep and its brand recognition, if I do a search for Jeep, watch, I probably won't get the hit to come up again. I think it was just Jeep and brand. Oh yeah, here it is. Winning formula makes Jeep most copied brand. And here you have an abstract, which is a summary. Okay, that this article shows that Jeep is one of the most copied brand of U.S. vehicles. If I go into the article itself, it's very short, and it's not the greatest article in the world, but then I noticed actually there probably is something I could use here. And it's not because research isn't a requirement and I just have to go and grab anything. But I noticed that here, okay, Jeep can claim many milestones, but here's one you might not have thought of. It's one of the most copied brands of American vehicles. That does connect with what I'm talking about, right? Because the first line of my essay was Jeep, the well-known brand practically markets itself. Okay, there is a connection there. Maybe I would use in my introduction, or maybe I would use it somewhere else. Maybe in my conclusion, that would be a nice thing to return to, the little factoid. Because a neat trick is to have your conclusion echo the introduction. Okay, it's not literally repeating the introduction, but it's revisiting the same themes. So maybe bringing up the notion that the Jeep brand is so strong that it's one of the most copied brands around might reinforce the very imagery that I started with. There was another interesting thing here too. I forget where it was. Oh, here, I think it was this. Early competitors tore apart military Jeeps while creating their own versions. Like there might be something worth pulling here. And again, not just because I'm desperate to throw something in there, but because I do think it's kind of echoing what I'm talking about. So that's the key. You probably want to do searches for things that are going to help support your body paragraphs. But once you're drafting your essay, hopefully research will feel a bit logical because you'll just hopefully feel the moments that you could probably look for something support-wise. I already knew that I wanted to research something about Jeep's brand. And yeah, I found something. Or, let's see, McDonald's. What was I searching for earlier before this session started? McDonald's. Image. I'll add in advertising too. Oh, and be sure to click this guy here, full text, because what it does is you need results that either have a PDF or an HTML, because that means the article is actually available. If I scroll down, probably not going to find any here. But every so often you have one that doesn't, okay? And that means that the source isn't truly available. With this, I'm getting all good results. But just make sure, and plus it gets rid of some of these. As you can see, we have 324 results, but if we click full text, it eliminates about 50 of them. And obviously things are going to be off topic. Children's recall of fast food television, cultural paradoxes reflected in brand meaning. That sounded interesting, except it's specifically about McDonald's in China. How McDonald's won the burger wars. Okay, but there's something interesting here. Something about McDonald's and yeah, McDonald's successfully portrayed its image as a source of love and human happiness, as a place for being a family. That may not connect entirely with the first day commercial, but there's something interesting here, right? About McDonald's trying to craft an image. As I said in week one, ads don't just sell products, they sell ideas. And that McDonald's ad, that commercial, is definitely selling an idea. So yeah, you're going to have to play around with keywords. You know, there's a main keyword, and then you can add extra search things in there. And you can think big. So here I'm looking for McDonald's and its image in advertising. Or you can look for something very, very specific, like use of color in advertising or use of nostalgia in advertising. There's one of the ads that plays powerfully with the theme of nostalgia. Okay, so you can think very, very micro in terms of like specific, maybe technical things, or you can think big. But we're looking for, yeah, 3 sources that help support what you're saying. I already know that I'll probably want to add something about color here to support what I'm saying. Okay? Because if not, here's another key thing. If you don't include research, then the paper ends up sounding like the world according to Jacob or the world according to Grace. And yes, we do want to hear your ideas and your thoughts. It's primarily your piece, your analysis. But yeah, it's pretty standard that you include some support to back up what you're saying. Okay? So there's just a reminder of research. One source has to come from the library databases. You should be, yeah, I don't know if I like the word scholarly, but we should be trying to find one reputable source. Actually, they should all be reputable, but one that's, yeah, we're looking for people who are paid as writers, okay, whose work was edited, and we're staying away from things like Wikipedia, about.com, those super, super general kind of sites. Research is not just running out to Google, finding something that looks good and throwing it in your paper. Okay, and that's the detail here. Avoid unreliable or overly general sources. Okay, and research takes time. That's true. I fooled around with the database before this session to find those examples. Okay, and there's just a repeat of what I said. Okay, you can use the one that's provided for you. One should come from the database. One can come from, and you can find all 3 from the database. That's fine. But one can come from online. Citing research, we're actually going to get into a bit more next week. Okay, all papers have to be in APA format. Some of you might have had to do citation in the past, but probably a lot of you did MLA. APA is different, but its goals are the same. Okay, it's just a different style system, but they're both trying to handle the same thing. And APA is not difficult. It requires some time and some attention to detail, but it's not difficult. And you have a whole bunch of sources available to you to help with this. And plus, I'll probably spend some time in next week's session going through some of this with more detail. And the purpose of APA or MLA or Chicago, all these different style systems, is basically to give credit, okay, but also to present the paper in a logical, globally understood way. Yes, giving credit for in citations, but also even the layout. Okay, APA includes layout, so specific rules for spacing, paragraphing, indenting, inclusion of page numbers, a header, and yeah, it just makes your document look more professional because it looks great when I see really pretty looking documents. You would think, well, isn't that less important than the actual content of my work? Yes and no. Same thing with a job interview. You don't show up in sweatpants or a stained t-shirt. And when papers come in looking professional, it really does make the writing seem even that much stronger. But when I see some papers single space, some papers are in a ginormous font, some papers are in a microscopic font, yeah, it looks a little bit chaotic. Okay, and understanding how to cite sources will help you in your future career. Maybe. You probably won't use APA in your future careers, but I do think there is an importance about being able to follow instructions and being able to present a document professionally. And yes, to be able to give credit. You may not have to use APA in the future, but all of you are in fields where giving credit is super important. Okay, those of you who are headed into film or television, incredibly important. Next time you watch, whether it's a TMZ show on television or Entertainment Tonight or even ESPN, right? There's a whole list of credits at the end for the videos that they used. Even your nightly news has credits. If you're working in graphic design, either creating your original material or giving credit for anything that you use is important. Music, of course, that's obvious, right? You use a sample of someone's music, even if it's just a second or two, and you have to give credit and maybe pay royalties. So yeah, you're all heading into careers where giving credit is incredibly important. But just as a quick preview, each citation has two parts, and you have to have both of them. In-text citation, so obviously this is the stuff that's going to appear in the essay itself. Okay, references, that's something different. That's the final page that you tack on at the end of your paper, where you present full information for your sources. But in text, you're just giving people brief information. Okay, so it goes in the text of your actual essay. They're short because they don't want to interrupt things. And they also indicate which ideas, words came from not you. Okay. Sometimes people think, oh, but I'm not quoting, so I don't have to cite. No. Even if you word things completely in your own terms. For example, that Jeep detail I found about how it's one of the most copied brands. If I come up with my own way to word that, I still include a citation because I had no idea, right? That's someone else's hard work, original input that I learned. So I need to cite that. Obviously, direct quotes need to be cited too. And they sort of match with the references page. So an in-text citation will typically have the author's last name, a year, maybe a page number. And then when you see that last name, you know which name to look for on the references page. And the references page, again, is that separate page at the very end. It includes much more detailed information. And it allows your readers to find the source and investigate further. You might not think that you're terribly interested in finding those sources yourself, but sometimes I do. Yeah, sometimes the stuff that appears on your references page, I end up checking out just as a matter of interest. Okay, and this just repeats what I said. Whether you're quoting directly or not, you still need to cite. And here's some examples, okay? So here's an example of where someone has written something completely in their own words, but the idea that they're writing about came from someone else. Okay, so companies demonstrate ethos in the way they present their brand's persona in advertising. That's not a direct quote. This is the author's original language. But the idea came from this article written by Engbers, 2013. This will be difficult maybe for you to remember, but I'm going to point you to assets that you have to help with this. But basically, when you're not directly quoting, just an author's name and year is fine. But if you do quote directly, then you need a page number. And actually, I didn't make this presentation. Another instructor did for me, but that's incorrect. It should just... there we go. Okay, it should just be lowercase p, not PG. And here, typically you should find a way to lead into the quotation. A good way to do that is just attribute it to the actual writer. Okay, so according to Susanna Engbers, and as soon as you mention that author's name, you put the year of publication in parentheses. It's just an APA convention. Might seem weird to stick in a year right in your sentence, but that's the convention. And then once the quotation is over, you put a page, okay, a page number. So you paraphrase something, no page number. You quote something directly, you can follow this format here. And on the right, you have examples of references, okay? So here's a full reference for that article by Susanna Engbergs, or however you pronounce her name. Okay. And yeah, this site here, I'm going to type it in your chat because I recommend bookmarking this, projectapa.info. This was made by a fellow Full Sail instructor in the English department. Oops. You do have some other assets for you underneath the activities on the FSO platform. And maybe some of you know about like Purdue University's online writing lab. That's another popular one to go to. But I recommend go ahead and click on that link, Project APA info that I just sent you, and bookmark it. Because this kind of covers the crux of what you need to do. So for example, in-text citations. Because here's the thing, it's largely about copying the model, okay? Once you find your quote that you need to use, just find the example of how to do it and do the same thing. Same thing for the references page. If you're unsure, for example, okay, I have one print source, so this will show how to do that. An article from a newspaper, an article from a magazine, online, or print. But let's say it's a YouTube video, and you're thinking, gosh, how do I do that? How do I cite a YouTube video? Well, just go to the audio-visual section. Okay, and there's an example of how to cite a YouTube video. And you just have to copy the example. It's really that simple. So yeah, APA shouldn't be this huge scary thing because it's largely about modeling what you need to do. Okay, so I hope everybody bookmarked that. And there are some more examples. And I lost my cursor. Hold on. There we go. You see the cursor on your end, but I don't. Okay, so again, there's a basic in-text citation. For direct quote, we put another comma, oops, plus the year, excuse me, after the year, page number. And there's another example of a YouTube video, okay? And actually, that's a specific one for that pathos, logos, and ethos, and advertising. So if you want to take a quick screenshot, there, one of your references is done for you. Indenting, because of this presentation, doesn't really allow for it, but actually the reference needs to be double spaced, and it's the opposite of paragraph format. In a paragraph, you always indent the first line of a new paragraph. On the references page, it's the opposite. The first line does not get indented, but these two lines would. So these two lines you have to imagine being bumped over. Okay, but there's the basic information you need. So that one's been given to you if you want to take a screenshot or come back to this lecture. Project APA I just showed. You have the APA Basics PDF on the course site. Purdue University also has a pretty good reference section, so you can get there always by typing Purdue OWL. Okay, you can go right to APA. And you get the same information here. How to deal with in-text citations, reference list, etc. Okay. Okay, questions? Any questions? I do want to get back to one question someone asked earlier about the Learn, Smart, Achieve modules. I did notice that some people, and I've already talked to one person about this who's still working on it, but I noticed some people didn't start at all. And please take advantage of these because they're easy points. Again, if you can complete the module to 100%, you get 100. If you complete it to 86%, you get an 86. But yeah, don't let those easy points go away. I'm trying to find the earlier question about the LSA module. But in the meantime, if people have specific questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. On the other hand, if you are comfortable with what we went over, you are allowed to go enjoy the rest of your evening. And I thank you so much for attending. We'll do this the same time next week. But I am going to hang out and answer questions. Now I can't find the earlier LSA question. Do comments in the chat disappear if someone leaves the room? Maybe that's what happens. Any questions? Comments? You're welcome, Grace. Have a good night, too. Again, if you're good with what we went over, you're free to take off and enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, it's Jesse who said something. When I do the practice questions, is that my LSA? I'm seeing a lot of this where I'm not sure what that question means, but the reading activities for each week, as you can see, they're weighted at 0%, which basically means they're optional. We'd like students to do the reading activities, but they're very much supplemental. Um, so yeah, if you go into mcgrawhill.com and click on the readings, there is this option where you can click on practice questions, um, and that eliminates certain items to get to 100%. But I am seeing a few people confusing that with Learn Smart Achieve. So I know we only have a handful of people in the room, but I'm going to keep talking because people might watch this recording and find this useful. If I go to McGraw Hill and sign in, and I do realize that things look different on the student side of things, but I think I can go into that view. Okay, so the Learn Smart Achieve stuff is always at the top, and it's simply a matter of clicking one of these activities, and it will literally walk you through the steps. Okay, it will set up a schedule if you want to follow a specific schedule, but you don't have to follow it. You can sit down in a single hour or two and bang out the entire module right there and then, or you can work on it piecemeal a couple days per week. And then here are the specific readings. Okay, and I think what some people are getting confused about is that, yeah, they see the reading activities. They probably don't maybe realize that it's not actually graded. I don't want to encourage people not to do reading, but prioritize. Okay, it'd be great if you could do the readings, but focus on the stuff that actually is worth percentage points of your grade. But yeah, if you go into specific readings, um, the Smart Book opens, and I don't know. Well, actually, Jesse's still here, so that's good. Um, and yeah, there are things you have to read, and when you're ready, you can. I think this is what Jesse's talking about. You can answer a bunch of practice questions. Free writing, which is also known as you fill in the blanks, is often a first step in the. I'm going to guess this is brainstorm organizational. I think. I did do the reading. You can also say how confident you are. If you're super confident, you say, I know it. Oh my gosh, I'm wrong. But as you answer them correctly, the number of items disappears. But here's the thing, because it's not a graded activity, Jesse, you don't have to do this. I mean, it'd be great if you can find time to do it, have fun with it. What you need to do, let me see if I can get back there. Oops. Basically, if you go in the readings, all you have to do is read. Okay, you don't have to click on the practice questions and get those items down to 0 because, well, they're not graded. And now this is going to take forever, probably. You know what? I'm going to go back to the instructor view. Okay, things look different on your end, but again, the Learn Smart Achieve modules appear at the top, and you just have to click on one. But yeah, don't confuse. The readings are one set of activities. The Learn Smart Achieve, those are graded. They're worth 5%. So I'm going to be flexible with this first week because I know last week was interrupted by the holiday. I'll let people catch up this week if they can. But yeah, it's those guys at the top that you have to complete. Okay? And you just go through the steps. So yeah, just make sure that you're clicking on those first 4 things you see at the top of the page called Learn, Smart, Achieve. We actually wanted to eliminate the readings completely. It's a little bit too confusing, but we weren't able to remove it for this month, so we basically made it optional. But yeah, students are getting confused because they see it there and are trying to work through it. I'm also getting reports that the dates are, for some reason, McGraw-Hill is letting students know that they're behind, even though they're not behind, and that's confusing students. Okay, so all you have to do is, I think, click somewhere.
Let's start learning. This adaptive study session will help you improve your proficiency on the listed topics.
Shush. Okay, so there's a woman who will explain things.
Pick your next learning mission.
Okay. And basically you have to go through these. They're all the same thing. It's just how you want to do it. You can either just tackle the assignment entirely, and they give you an approximate time, 2 hours, 35 minutes. Some students can complete it much faster than that. Some students maybe it takes a little bit longer. Okay. There are specific questions they ask. Let's see if I can get this one right. Complete the sentence with the correct word. The strategy for integrating source material that requires writers to offer reasoned arguments by examining a particular aspect of a text from a specific stance or perspective is called what? Strategy for integrating source material that requires writers. I'm going to guess criticism. Let's say you're not super sure. I think so. Yay, correct. Okay, and then you move on. And the only thing I'm confused about here, though, is that usually there's stuff to read first, because right now it's jumping me into questions. And you shouldn't be answering questions right off the bat without reading things first. Bear with me. For people who aren't interested in this, you don't have to stick around. But if you are, feel free to watch. Okay. Come on.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
We will continue.
Okay.
Pick your next learning mission.
Okay. I must be missing something, though. It's probably because I raced through it too quickly.
Welcome back.
Your study session. Okay.
Pick your next learning mission.
Has anybody here done the week 1 LSA? Did anybody here, Irene, Jesse, or Monty, do the week 1 stuff completely? Because I have to admit, this is the first time. I've spent time with this in the past, but this is McGraw-Hill completely changed the format of their work. Usually there's stuff to read through first. Like, I don't understand how you can just jump in and answer questions if you haven't reviewed material first. So if someone here knows what I'm missing, what I'm not clicking on first. Or maybe that's how it works. Maybe you're just supposed to learn from answering. Like this one makes sense, okay? You have to read the passage and then answer the questions. Is this a successful summary? I'm going to guess that it's this. No, I'm wrong. Oh, I see. Wait a second. They did give... Okay. The goal of an outline is to bring various elements together to create a plan for a writing project that demonstrates... I'm going to guess logical structure, because we just talked about outlines. This would be really embarrassing if I get this wrong. Yay! Oh, sometimes you get it half correct. I guess I was supposed to include coherence too. Okay. When you answer it looks like they give suggested resources. Okay, so I guess here's where you can get information, further information about the question. Irene, I see your hand is up. Did you want me to try to unmute you so you can ask something out loud? Okay, we'll see how this goes. Sometimes I have some problems with this when I have my mic plugged in. Actually, let me try to unplug my headset. Can people still hear me? Can people hear me when I talk? Yes? Okay. Irene, I'm going to unmute you in 1 second. Okay, give it a go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So, what were you confused about with the reading?
With this thing I have on the screen now, or the readings?
Well, I think with this, you were saying, how there should be reading before actually answering questions.
Right.
Yeah, that's with the actual, like, reading assignments that you read first, and then there's, like, practice in the left-hand corner, and then they ask you questions. With this, I believe it, asks you for your knowledge right now, I guess, and then it, gives you, like, that reading that you have right on the screen right now, just to go over some things that, you might not know, for the topic, if that makes sense.
No, that does. And I think that's my sense of it too. It's just they literally changed everything. Last month was the first month, because in the past they would have you watch or read through a very short lesson, just 5 minutes, and then you would answer questions based on them. So yeah, this is my first time seeing the new format, which
Yeah, okay.
I'm learning
Okay,
along with you guys.
to help you and see if you understood that with this, it's just the the what's it called? The questions, and
Right.
then the reading helps you later.
Right. No, I think
Welcome
that's
back.
correct. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Pick your next learning mission.
Be quiet. Let's see what that one does. When a student hands in a paper that uses another person's ideas, words, does not say that the student will likely face severe consequences for, oh, I know this one, plagiarism. Yay. But yeah, this is not how it worked in the past, where you first test your knowledge, because even I'm getting them wrong. True, I'm racing through them. Which of the following forms of the first sentence of the paragraph are examples of plagiarism? Or the first time feeling anxious about school and all that comes with it is completely normal. Well, obviously that's plagiarism. Yeah, all of us, but see, it's partially correct. Those ones drive me crazy, where there's 2 right answers. But eventually you'll get like repeated questions, and then you know which ones to answer. Okay. Irene, are you raising your hands again? Or did I just forget to... Maybe your hand is still up from before. Okay, so that's how it works. Actually, you know what? And maybe I'll say this in an announcement. At the end of the month, let me know how the Learn Smart Achieve went for people, okay? If it was useful, if they found it frustrating to try to answer questions without having some sort of lesson first. Because I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised by that too. It wasn't like that in the past. Very weird. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, because I feel so bad for the people who are going to watch this, wondering why the instructor is just going through the LSA. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you so much for watching.